Hello, historians. This is Mr. Fredo. Today's episode is all about what the Catholic Church does in response to all of these protests leveled by the protesters and the reformers that have been happening over the course of hundreds of years, really, when you go back in time to the time of John Wycliffe or Jan Hus, leading up through the actions of people like Martin Luther and King Henry VIII and John Calvin. But to put it plainly, this is the real deal. The protesters have been heard. We can put it that way. And what they've done is they've woken the giant up, and the response is going to be very serious because the Catholic Church isn't going to meet and make any changes if they aren't very, very serious about changing and eliminating these protests from even happening. Because every protest brings with it bad publicity, about the Catholic Church. So they want to take very strategic steps to make sure that it doesn't happen anymore. There's two parts to the Catholic Church's response. The first part is the Catholic Reformation. That's when the Catholic Church changes itself. They're going to look at their rules and their policy, and they're going to make changes to what they're doing so that people no longer have an excuse to protest against them. The second step is the Counter Reformation, and this is when they actually strike back against the protesters. So their first step is, let's make these changes to ourselves. Let's truly change ourselves, the Catholic Church. And once we do that, we're going to say to everyone, okay, we've made those changes. We've heard you. We've eliminated this. We've eliminated that. We're going to change this. We're going to change that. And now if you continue to come after us, and if you continue to protest against the Catholic Church, we are going to come after you, and you are going to pay for it. Two parts to the Catholic Church's response. It all begins with the Council of Trent in Trent, Italy, which occurs in 1545 CE. And this is a huge meeting, one of the most important meetings in Catholic Church history. But anybody who's anyone in the Catholic Church would be there. The cardinals, the Pope would be there, important priests, bishops, you name it. But they have this meeting to devise their plan. That's what this whole meeting is all about. What are we going to do about these protests? And they come up with two phases. The first thing they're going to do is change themselves. That's the Catholic Reformation. And then they want to strike back. That's the Counter Reformation. So at this meeting, some very important decisions are made. First, let's look at the Catholic Reformation, what they actually do to change themselves. They make a very important decision that they are going to eliminate some things that people were very, very unhappy about. Indulgences, the fact that you could buy a ticket that would forgive you of your sins. They get rid of that. They say it's immoral, we shouldn't be doing it, we're not going to do that anymore. They also outlaw simony. So all of those auctions for those very important church positions, no more. The Catholic Church says those are going to have to be earned on your merit as a member of the clergy, someone who works for the Catholic Church in a religious capacity. They also make a couple other changes. They're going to increase the training that clergy receive because their thought process is if the quality of the training is longer, it's harder, it's better, that means the clergy is going to be better overall. And that also means the clergy isn't going to make these same mistakes that so many clergy had made before. Another decision that they make in terms of change is proximity. If you are the priest of Rome, you actually have to live in Rome. You can't leave Rome and go live wherever you want and just collect tithes and taxes from the city of Rome. If that's where you're supposed to be there to, number one, work in your capacity as a church leader, but also two, be there, be proximal to that area to make sure that, again, these things are no longer happening. That's phase one. Now the Catholic Church can say, we've had this big meeting, we've made these big changes. Now it's time for you to acknowledge that we've heard you, and if you continue to protest against us, we are coming after you. That's the Counter Reformation. And the consequences are very, very serious. You could be imprisoned. And this is not like a simple stay in a jail cell. And many times this could be throughout the rest of your life. If you continued to protest after the changes were made that relate to the Catholic Reformation, you could be excommunicated, which some people say, well, what's the big deal? If you're kicked out of the Catholic Church and it's a place that you disagree with and you're not allowed to be Catholic anymore, why would that matter? This would have a huge impact on your social standing. It's like being declared a heretic. People would not want to associate with you. Yes, if you're excommunicated, in many cases you would get to keep your life, but because your social standing decreases so much, your life might as well be over. It's going to change where you live, who you interact with, and the interactions that you do have if you're allowed to have any. And then also death, being burned at the stake publicly to make an example out of you. is another part of the Counter Reformation where the Catholic Church is saying, okay, we heard you, we made these changes, now don't do it again or else. One of the big questions related to this phase and the second part of the Reformation overall is trying to determine how effective were these changes? Did the protests stop? And the second big follow-up question is, how much has the church actually changed? Yes, they changed some of their rules, but as these people like Martin Luther and these people like John Wycliffe and Jan Hus and John Calvin and Desiderius Erasmus, as they look back and see what the Catholic Church has done and what they're doing, would they be happy with what the church has become as a result of all the work they put in throughout their course as a protester during the Reformation?